Hello and welcome to Backstage Goss, the podcast where we dive into the entertainment world. Not just the red carpets and glitter, but the panic, the tears, the questionable career choices, and the what was I thinking moments too. We're talking to real people with real dreams, surviving the highs, the lows, and the occasional identity crisis along the way. So, grab your popcorn. This is going to be fun. Today we meet with Scott Payne. Now, he is a writer for TV. You might remember some of his works: A Kind of Spark, Hollyoaks, Dumping Ground, Worst Witch. He loves kids' entertainment. He opens up this world, and actually there's a lot of nepotism that goes on. So how do you make it in this industry if you're a nobody?
Okay, hello, my name's Scott Payne. I'm a TV writer, so a lot of my credits have been on children's shows, so probably the most well-known would be like The Worst Witch, or quite recently A Kind of Spark, and Dumping Ground, and one of my first jobs was on Hollyoaks for a couple of years. So that's the one I always tell people that, you know, they immediately recognise.
What the go-to first, is it?
Yeah. Because people are like, well, what have you worked on? And, you know, if I say Hollyoaks, especially in the UK, people know it. Whether they like it or they don't like it, at least they know it.
Yeah, it is.
Before that, it was a lot of, it was this obscure radio thing that you might have heard, you know, and it's just, you know. It was,
so you've done radio as well, have you?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
What did you do?
It was a children's TV, no, I'm used to saying TV. It's a children's radio series on a channel called Fun Kids. This was just after university, so going back a while, but it was me and some friends put together they were only like 3 minutes each episode. It was like 10 episodes. Yeah. But we put a lot of work into them. It was called Professor Phlegm and the Lost Treasure Hunt. Yeah. So it was a big fantasy adventure series, which was a lot of fun. So that was one of the first things.
You know, when you wrote that, yeah. Why did you come up with phlegm?
I just thought it would be memorable, and it was sort of designed to be sort of grossly funny.
Well, it was definitely, I'm sitting here thinking every time the guy speaks, he goes, yes, let me tell you about it. You're like, oh my God.
Well, she was a she, actually. Yeah, we don't know.
Oh, really? Oh my God.
Yeah, the name had no relevance, really. It was just kind of,
bless you.
Just a silly name.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, let's get into it. I'd really appreciate you coming on to Backstage Goss to talk about your industry. What I'd like to do is take you back to your early days, really. You know, as a kid, give us some context. You know, what were you like as a child? Education.
Mm-hmm. So I grew up in a little village in Lincolnshire called Sutton Bridge. And my family were farmers, or are farmers, I should say. Like, my granddad owned a farm, my dad worked on that, and now my granddad's retired, and dad works on other people's farms. But yeah, it was basically a very rural upbringing. I went to a local comprehensive school. Both my primary and secondary schools were sort of the average state school, basically.
Was that the Peel School?
Yes, I forgot. Yeah,
I know the Peel School.
Yeah, it was the Peel School, which is now called the University Academy Long Sutton. I was very into reading. I read a lot of children's books. Funnily enough, like one of the shows I worked on, The Worst Witch, was a book I happened to love when I was like 6 years old.
You're kidding?
Yeah.
Wow, what a reality check that is, to go back to that.
I know, yeah, and I have a copy of it, which is like torn to pieces and sellotaped together, because I just read it constantly. So when the series came back, you know, I was like jumping at the bit to do it.
I bet.
So yeah, and I was always into like fantasy stuff. I was into television. I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I did a lot of like fan fiction-y things, but I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do at first. I remember when I was like, how old would I have been? Like 9 or so. Because I think my teachers knew I was into writing, and we had an author come in for like book week, and he sort of had a one-on-one chat with me,
Oh,
which was
wow.
really nice. I can't really remember anything that he said, but I remember like just the fact that it
Very
happened.
memorable.
Yeah, the fact that it happened was like nice, and I remember that, and it
Yeah.
was a real boost. But I was very quiet about it as well. Like I didn't like to advertise it because it was, it was rural Lincolnshire. Everyone here is a farmer or a mechanic, or like it was being into writing was not
Yeah, right.
something that kind of was typical. And so I was very self conscious about it. So I kind of
Yeah.
kept it to myself a bit. But my
You'd have been
teachers,
that
you
weird
know,
kid, wouldn't you?
yeah, I was the weird kid.
Weird one that
Yeah.
writes.
Yeah, I was the weird one. It's like I had like particularly at primary school, like I had a lot of friends. I always got on with people, but it was just something that I was just self conscious about, and I didn't really own it until much later in my teens. But yeah, but I remember like I over the years I was like, would I like to go into journalism? I was really into drawing, so I thought about maybe comics. At one point, I toyed with the idea of being a stand-up, but I hate talking in front of
No,
people.
wait, stop, wait. We go from right to the stand. Where
I
did that
know.
come from? Where did the stand up
I
come
don't
from?
know. I think I just like I enjoyed comedy a lot, and like I kind of like liked the idea of doing it, but not enough to actually want to do it.
Who were your influences then for comedy?
Oh, so I loved, and these aren't stand-up comedians, but like I loved Fawlty Towers, Vicar of Dibley. So I watched a lot of
Yeah,
like the sort of like old school classic sitcoms,
yeah,
and then I watched a lot of like panel shows and like Have I Got News for You and all of those kind of things. Oh, do you know what? Looking back, like we went to see Ken Dodd when I was like 10, and
wow.
his shows are like 5 hours long.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it was great, and I used to love panto as well. We used to go every year at school at Christmas time. We'd go to see a pantomime in Hunstanton,
yeah. We
and
got a lot in common, you and I. We
yeah,
have. I'll tell
yeah.
you about that in a minute. Yeah, go on, you carry on.
But I used to, because we didn't. There wasn't a big theatre scene locally, so I didn't really go see plays.
Yeah,
But we did see a panto once a year, and I loved it. Like the whole, I loved the kind of meta comedy of it as well. Like they kind of
yeah,
knew they
sure.
were performing. It was kind of, yeah, just a really good time. And I think I always got a buzz in those environments. So I kind of knew I wanted to go into something performative in that way. But I also knew I
Yeah, yeah.
wasn't personally that confident a public speaker. But yeah, so what do we have in common?
Well, we have in common. Okay, so let's go back to Ken Dodd. Ken Dodd came to Newark, and I interviewed him. Yeah, for a radio show that I was doing, and he was just such a really nice guy. You know that persona you see on stage and everything else? He does have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
serious side to him. And we were talking about his past, about growing up, his influences, blah, 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 all the way through. And he was telling me he spent 10 years on an apprenticeship going around all of those pubs and clubs, nailing down his art form. And he said, nowadays, he said, what do they do? They want to be instant stars and everything. Nobody wants to work at anything. So it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a real eye opener for me, and he was lovely. Yeah, the second thing is pantomimes. Oh my god, they are my love. For 25 years plus, I was doing Newark Community panto. We had that going, and I had a couple of business partners that we put that on. Anything panto, I'm there. I used to act in them, direct them, write them, produce them, you name it, we're there. I've moved out of that field at the moment, but we've got one last ride to do because my last business partner, bless him, he died at the age of 40. He had Dickie Hart, and I promised him that we would go and do one more panto and raise some money for the British Heart Foundation. So there's our connection.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your colleague, but yeah, that's so. It's still kind of a dream to be involved in a pantomime somewhere.
Whoa, stop. No, don't say that to me because things happen when people say things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I had an interview the other day with a young lady who wanted to do some film production work. She was neurodivergent and she wanted to be involved in a neurodivergent project. I'm actually working on one at the moment with three other people. We brought her in. We brought her in. So, are you saying you'd like to go out on out and act in a pantomime? What is it you
Oh
want to
no, I
do?
don't know. Maybe a minor role. I don't know. It could be fun, but it also depends on where it is because how convenient it is as well.
Yeah,
Like
no,
now, the
sure.
real world adult life comes in, and it's like, oh, I'm not available on this day.
Yeah. That's easy
But
to
like
throw in.
maybe in retirement, I could do it or something.
Well, it used to take me a year, a
Hmm,
whole year, to sort everything out because we used to write our own scripts to cut down on
hmm,
royalties and all that type of
hmm,
stuff. Where did it? So when you got yourself into uni, you
hmm.
decided that you wanted to go. What was the course like? Where did you study?
Okay, yeah. So I should probably go back a couple of paces because
Yeah,
I think
sure.
I think about the time I was 16, I kind of had settled on the idea that I'd like to go into TV writing. And I'd kind of knew I was in a way I was kind of like I want to say naive or reckless or like I just put all of my eggs into that basket, which is a very ambitious basket. And but you're like 16 and you just want to give it a go and you don't really think about it. So I went to college and I did A levels in English, media, and film. Again, all very
Wow.
relevant.
Yeah.
And I looked around universities, and the one I really wanted to go to, which is the one I ended up in, was Bournemouth University, which is about 4 hours drive from where I
Yeah.
lived. But it was at the time, it was like it might still be. I'm not entirely sure. Like it was like the top credited media school in the country. And it was sold as having like lots of working writers, like teaching the course. And it was a very practical course.
Yeah.
So that was what I wanted to do. And I got uh, just scraped to the A levels I needed to get into it. And it's funny, really, because coming from a kind of sort of ordinary background, like, I was there with my, like, I think 1A and 2Bs, and I was like, yes, I did it. And, I'd meet people from other walks of life, and they were like, there with their like 3A stars. It was like, yeah, I was just like, okay, I feel very lucky to have got in here. But there was a while when I was like, I couldn't imagine living anywhere else because obviously I hadn't. And, you're finally living without your parents. And actually, my first few months of uni were not great. Like, I had housemates that I didn't get along with. Yeah, we just didn't. We were very different. Like, they were kind of there for a laugh, and they had quite wealthy backgrounds,
Yeah.
and didn't really take it seriously. They were really into clubbing and going out, and like every night it was like another night out. And I was up for that a little bit, but not that much. And I was very insular and quiet, and I kind of wanted to sort of my own space, really. And we just had a bit of a personality clash, which then sort of escalated over weeks into becoming like proper animosity.
Oh.
And there was and I used to avoid going home. Like I used to go into uni. The first week I was like, oh, this is not for me. I need to go home because the first week is all like freshman stuff, and it's all just
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
the course hasn't
Full
started
on.
yet. You haven't met anyone yet. And I was like, oh, this is horrible. I'm going home. And then I started my course and I met people who were much more on my wavelength. And in hindsight, mostly all neurodivergent like I was, even though I didn't know that at the time, but we'll come to that later.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
So I had a so I should probably just say I have ADHD. I was late diagnosed only a couple of years ago. So my entire life story is with this kind of unawareness that I was neurodivergent. I felt like I'd found my people. So I used to spend all my time at uni and I would avoid going home as much as possible.
Oh gosh.
And I used to get home at like 11 at night because I know they'd be in a nightclub and they wouldn't be there, because it was just awkward. And I used to just hang around the campus and hope that someone I know was there and
Really?
bump into
Oh,
them. Yeah,
what
it was really
existence.
miserable.
Blimey.
And it kind of all culminated. And I remember it so well. It was Children in Need. And because I used to sort of watch all the Comic Cons and Children in Need, so that's how it sticks in my head. They'd come home and they were having, I can't really remember what triggered it, but they were drunk and just having a go at me. And I just walked out of the house at like 1 in the morning. And I walked down the road and I got to, and I rung a friend and I was like, I need to come stay somewhere. I can't be here anymore. And then there was suddenly this like assault happening in front of me. So I got to this pub, and there was this guy who was like high or something, and he was assaulting this woman. Um,
Mm,
he was kind of like kicking her basically, and there was this crowd kind of not doing anything.
good heavens.
Um, and I kind of like just on instinct sort of tried to break it up, and I was just kind of I don't know what I thought I was going to do. I think I naively thought if I just said "Oi," he might just go.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but he sort of then started turning around and then attacking me. So he punched me a few times, and I was just kind of stunned. I didn't really react. And I literally remember thinking, it's funny. Like in my brain, it's like slow motion as his fist is coming towards my face. I'm thinking, oh God, this is the last thing I need.
Here we go.
It was just like, oh, well, yeah, typical. Top it
Yeah,
off. What a day, you know.
yeah.
And yeah, so but I think because I didn't really fight him back because I was just sort of stunned and didn't really do
Yeah.
anything, that he kind of gave up and he walked off.
Oh,
And then an ambulance came and I was patched up and I bit through my mouth and I still got a scar
oh
from
gosh.
that.
Yeah.
But then I kind of went to my friend and he's like, "Where you been?" And I was like, "Oh, long story." But it was a very surreal night. Like, but in a way, like that didn't phase me as much because it was kind of like quite straightforward. Like there was an obvious bad guy, there
Sure.
was an obvious victim, and there was an obvious incident. The last 4 months of bitter, like simmering tension in the household, that was where it was like, oh, like it just felt really awkward
Yeah.
and complicated,
Yeah.
and like who was in the wrong? Did I say something wrong that offended them? Blah 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 blah. And that was, that was still like a more pressing issue in my head. So I
Yeah.
tried to like, I think actually looking back on it, this is probably what set them off because I tried to leave a few weeks earlier. So I'd kind of, when I said, I think I need to move out, I think that had clearly, you know, ruffled their feathers because it had sort of made it explicit that I didn't like them. So therefore they had then had permission to not like me. But the university was like, oh, there's not really a lot of spaces available at the minute, blah, 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 kind of bit useless. Went back in the next day with a black eye and, bleeding face. And I was like, I'd like to move house, please. And they were like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah. I bet. You know what? I bet their old arsehole went. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I came in
um,
yesterday. I did mention to you, didn't I?
yeah.
Yeah.
I got really involved with the extracurricular activities. So that was a really key thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because so the course itself, I should say, was like, it was half academic. At that time, I wasn't that interested in that stuff, and it was half practical. So first year, it was like you would write a short film, which was about 6 minutes, and it would be a silent film, in the sense that no one could talk.
Yeah.
So they were trying to teach you that film is a visual medium,
Yeah.
and to be less reliant on dialogue. Then we had like a half-hour script, and then we had at the end of that a 40-minute script. But then the second year it was like you would do a TV project. So you'd work as a group, come up with a series Bible, come up with a script. I think there was another script as well. Oh yeah, there was. I wrote that one in a night. Long story. And then then the final year was your dissertation, and you could either do a feature film or a TV pilot and a Bible, and I did a TV pilot. So that was the course. And then outside of that, I just got really involved with loads of like creative clubs. So I set up a writer society where we'd sort of have get-togethers and share work and give feedback. One of my good friends had set up like a alternative performing arts group. So there was the mainstream one, which did your usual big shows like I think they did Rent and well-known stuff, West Side Story, that kind of thing. But Simon did the kind of like alternative comedy stuff. So he put on like sketch shows, and a lot of it was quite dark humor. And I would contribute to that, and that was really fun. And we did a parody pantomime, it was like a dark pantomime, and I wrote a sketch for that. And then the other thing was we had a student TV station, and it was called Nerve TV. And it was analog at that time. Like you could literally find it on the Bournemouth TV remote control. Scroll through. It is. And there were like a couple of things on it, not very much. But we made like a comedy panel show because again I was obsessed with stuff like Mock Week and that kind of thing at the time.
Yeah, right.
And we did like 4 episodes of that, and that was a lot of work. And
people don't actually understand that, though, do they? With the amount of work that actually goes into, like these panel shows and everything else.
It's a lot because you've got to find all the panelists, you've got to script the thing, you've got to find all your crew, and then you've got to edit it. And we sort of recorded it in front of an audience as well, so we had to advertise to get an audience in. Yeah, it was absolutely crazy looking back at it. Like I wouldn't even bother now. I think when you're like 18, I think when you're 18, you're just like, let's just do it. Let's just do it.
Right, and there it is. Yeah.
And we just did a lot, and and we even did like a comedy sketch show for radio as well. But it was really high quality. Like we worked with people from the radio course who
I love radio.
Yeah, one of them who that children's show I was mentioning earlier for radio, it was my friend Mog who I produced that. So the really valuable thing about uni was like meeting all of these people across different courses, keeping these contacts for life. Some of them still my best friends now, and who I've worked with professionally since as well. So it was incredibly important to me for that reason. The course itself was fine. I wouldn't say, no one's ever asked me, what did you get in your degree? Did you get a first? Well, I did get a first, but like, no, it's been of no use to me in that sense.
Let me just stop you there, because that is really interesting, isn't it? With all the grades and everything else, you just said something there that's actually important. It didn't make any difference. No,
it's on paper anyway. Like I think it makes an indirect difference. Like it, and I don't think it's essential at all. Like I've worked with people who didn't go to uni. It's not something you have to do to get into this industry. I think there are merits to it, like it's a good way of making contact, especially if, like me, you were from an area where no one was in television. There's a lot of nepotism in this industry. There's a lot of people who, my uncle was a producer on blah blah blah.
Right. Yeah.
And or if you go to like a top university like an Oxford or a Cambridge, and you have those links there, like if you already have access in that way, then that's useful. But I didn't. I came from a rural background. No one I knew was in media, so it was a logical place to go to, like, a first step, and from there, like, they would bring in like guest speakers and stuff,
Right.
and yeah, it was a chance for me to like actually start building those relationships. And there are other ways to do that as well, like, university is not the only way of doing that. But for me as an 18-year-old, that was useful. And then all of the experience of just making things and building up a show reel. And mind you, some of that stuff I would never show to anyone, but it was also just like, cutting your teeth and like training and
Yeah.
learning and,
Yeah. Yeah.
figuring out what works with loads of people who were like minded and, really passionate. And that was, really valuable. But yeah, when I'm sitting in meetings with producers, they might ask where I went to uni and they might ask what it was like, but no one said, well, what was your grade? Did you get this? Oh, I'm afraid, this other applicant had, got 70%, whatever, like, it doesn't happen like that at all. Yeah, it wasn't relevant really in a direct sense, but I think the environment was relevant, and the connections was relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
And
Oh,
also,
that's
if you're
positive.
18, yeah, and if you're 18, you want to just, you know, make friends and have a social life, it's valuable for that as well,
Yeah.
yeah, but not at all essential. And I've met people who are very successful who uni wasn't for them. I'd finished a degree in Bournemouth. I really loved Bournemouth and I didn't want to go home straight away. I wanted to give it another year. So I decided to get a job locally. And by the time my degree was over, I was skint. I was going into CEX and selling off DVDs so I could afford to eat. I worked out there was a Lidl nearby, and at the time there was like a jar of jam you could get for 17 pence and like a loaf of bread for 50p, and I would live off that for a
Ah,
week, you know?
they
Sorry?
just do not realise, what it's like.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just kind of, and I got really fed up with that. And there was the co-op were opening two new shops in town, so they were
Yeah.
doing a mass recruitment day. So I walked to the interview place. It was about a 40-minute walk, and it was pissing it down with rain. And I got there, I was so grumpy that like all of my usual social anxiety just vanished because I was just like I was just so angry with the weather and the world, and I was just like, I smashed the interview because I just suddenly had all this confidence that wasn't really typical of me. Yeah, then I worked there for like a year.
How important was it for you, though, every day, like you say? It was a bit of a drudge, but how important was that writing to do every day?
Very, I'd say. And I'm not someone who necessarily advocates that you have to write literally every day, but I
Mm,
think it's like you have to just keep constantly working at stuff and like having ideas. And during that time was when we started doing the children's radio series, so we were putting stuff out, and that came about because I made friends with my friend Mog, who was on a radio course, and he was like, "Oh, I've been chatting to this radio station. They're up for doing a children's series. Do you want to send me some ideas?" Things just flowed from there.
cool.
So we were just kind of, we were putting stuff out. Oh, we did a play. We did a sort of comedy play. So my friend Simon, who'd set up the alternative arts group, he's a comedian, actor, and he wanted to do like a one-man show.
Yeah.
So we co-wrote it with him performing it, and he performed like the entire thing, did all the characters, and that went to like, we did that at the Edinburgh Fringe and Camden
Cool. Yeah, yeah.
Fringe, and he toured it. And so we were constantly like doing stuff.
Yeah.
not really knowing where it would go, but it was just, you're just doing stuff for the sake of doing it, I suppose,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of learning. I think if like if anyone's listening to this who's a writer, it's just automatic that you do it anyway. Like you have the kind of brain that's constantly thinking of ideas, and then
Yeah.
you're actually pursuing them. Um,
Yeah.
Things come up in life, which means, oh, you don't literally have the time to write them down. You literally don't have the time to work on them. But I think writers' brains are just hardwired always to be like, oh, that could be a story, that could be something.
Right, right.
So I think you would do it like automatically in a way. So it wasn't like I did a year of work and was just kind of like had parked everything else. Like, the normal jobs were a means to an end. They were like, this will pay the rent while I do the other things. But then, yeah, so after a year at Bournemouth, doing that, do you know what? This is actually a good lesson, how naive I was. Like, we'd got a project together. So the radio show we did like a TV version of it. Like we wrote it as a pilot,
Right.
sent it off to a production company, and they were like, "Yeah, this is great. We'd like to work on this with you." And you're like 20, 21, really naive, and you're like, "Oh, great! I'm finally in television." So I was like, "It's all sorted," and I decided to go home. So I moved back in with my parents in Lincolnshire, left Bournemouth, and then learn the hard way that actually no, that's not how television works. Like, there was nobody really coming from that, and I hadn't really broken in. They were not the most reputable company in hindsight. Like, we learned
Oh,
that like a few months later. Like they had like a website, and they were like, they had made some stuff, but they were not someone that channels were actively like wanting to work with.
yeah, yeah.
So at that point, we were like, oh, okay, right, bit naive there. I can't remember. So I think so. Around about this time, I'm just circling back to. So when I mentioned first year of uni, there was like a final project which was like 40-minute script.
Yeah.
That one, based on the advice of a lecturer, I entered into a competition. It's called the Sir Peter Ustinov Award. I believe it still exists.
You
But
mean the actor Peter Ustinov?
yeah, so it's named after him. The
Yeah.
award is.
All right. Yeah. That's his
Yeah,
laugh.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah. So it's named after him, and it would if you won it, you get to go to the international Emmys and pick it up there.
Oh wow.
It's an award aimed at people who live outside of America, and you have to be under 30 to enter. So I entered it, and I was shortlisted. I made the top 10. I didn't win it, but that script got me a meeting with a producer, and it gave me a tour of the BBC, which was really exciting at the time because I was like, "Oh my god, I get to go to the BBC!" And this was the Circle building in West
Yeah,
London,
sure.
the thing that you'd see on Comic Relief. This was like the proper BBC, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's amazing!" That was like Disney World for me.
Mm.
And then yeah, but that script I kind of held on to, and then by the time so after leaving Bournemouth, this was about 2012, 2013. I was about 22 or so. I entered it again into another competition. So this was BBC Writers Room. We're doing a kind of regional outreach, and I it wasn't a kind of competition where you have one winner. It was like there was a group of us, and we went to BBC Birmingham to meet some of the writers on Doctors, and they did a little talk about that. And because I'd placed in that competition, that was the one that my now agent read that script.
Right.
And I should probably go back a pace just to explain how he became aware of me as well. So this again is where going to uni was useful, because one of my friends on the course became his assistant.
Oh.
So she recommended me to him, and I sent in my final year script for him to read, and he liked it. Sort of said, not quite for him, but shows potential. We'll keep an eye on you as a writer, keep in touch, that kind of thing. So it wasn't like, I had an friend who was his assistant, and it was that easy. Like it was just a kind of opening a door. But when this script placed in the competition, he has to read it, and then got back to me and said if I turned it into a children's TV pilot, he would represent me as a writer. And he was like, obviously look around, see if there are any other agents that you'd be interested in working with. You don't have to go with me. But I was like 22, and I was like, and someone's offering to be my agent, and I was like, yep, no, all good. Yep,
give me thank you.
Yeah. But he said something which was really useful. First time I met him. So we went to London, little cafe, to have like an initial meeting, and he sort of said, usually once you sign a writer, it takes about a year or 2 years to then get going. Like it takes to get your first paid writing job. Yeah. Because in that meantime, it's a lot about building connections, sending stuff out, waiting to hear back. So it's not instant. You get an agent, and then you get work. Your agent is there to kind of promote you and to introduce you to the industry and sign all the, negotiate all the contracts and stuff. Right. But they can't automatically get you a job. So it's a kind of partnership in a way. Like it's up to me to be creating stuff that he can send out, to be making a good impression on people when I'm meeting them, and to be networking, and then he's also doing that as well. So it's a team effort, really. I can't remember where I got to. So at that point I was living at home. I was writing original scripts and writing pitches and trying to sort of get into the industry. But I was broke, had no actual income. I was searching for jobs constantly and just having no luck.
Let me stop you there.
Miserable. Yeah.
Let me stop you there. Just on a miserable note, let's just do it. Yeah. Make it worse for you. So when you were writing your material and everything else, where did you find out where the next job could possibly be coming from? Were there certain sites or what?
So at the time, there was a website called Ideas Tap. And this advertised creative arts jobs. So I was applying for a lot of them. I was trying to apply for anything in the media and also just anything. So I was applying for Waterstones, and I had an interview and they rejected me. So annoyed. But really, the agents do a lot of that. So they're the ones going to the, the continuing dramas and putting you forward. So I wasn't actively looking at what shows are about, what could I get onto. You can do a bit of that, I suppose. There's no reason you couldn't look up the shows, look at the producers, send an email. Didn't really occur to me at the time. I was just kind of writing stuff, basically. That was my sort of objective, is to create material that was good enough to sort of get me at work. And then sometimes it's just about luck and timing as well. It depends what's going and what's about. So, but that year of unemployment was kind of useful because I just ended up watching a lot of television. And so it was a real good training in that sense, because, university had been so busy that I'd actually not watched a great deal. So I sort of binged so much stuff. So I got a real good sense of what was out there. So I had a couple of scripts going out, and then sort of the latter end of 2013, I did finally get a job, and it was as an in-store baker at a co-op. So I ended up doing exactly the same thing in a different shop, and I did that for 3 months, and then I got in an interview day. So the thing is, like, there were 2 projects I interviewed for on the same day, and they were both with a company called Lime Pictures, who are based in Liverpool, and they make Hollyoaks. So one of the interviews I had was on Hollyoaks, and then the other one was a children's show called Rocket's Island. And so I had Nick, my agent, booked both of them on the same day. So I travelled up to Liverpool, and the children's show was they'd read my children's script that I'd originally written to get with an agent. And then Hollyoaks had written another script that I'd written in the last year, which was a YA, sort of young adult fantasy drama about vampires, of all things. And yeah, I interviewed for both on the same day and got them both. So, like, yeah. So it was a real baptism of fire, that period, because I was kind of like finally actually in it. And at that point I could leave the co-op job for now. I always think maybe I'll go back again. I was starting on a soap and a children's show at the same time, and which was a lot, but I think it was really useful for me as well, because they're quite different. So it meant I didn't get sort of used to a particular way of working.
So let's have a look at some of the work that you've actually worked on. What was your first one?
Technically, my first one was Rocket's Island. This was a sort of kind of fantasy, but not. So it was about a boy called Rocket who lived on an island, and he had his parents fostered children, and they were all coming from like troubled backgrounds. But Rocket has a vivid imagination. So if something weird happens in the island, if something goes missing, in his head, it was because a dragon had taken it, or, there was some mystery to solve. So each episode had a kind of like fantasy element to it, which would always be revealed to be a real explanation. And in my episode, a girl thinks she's discovered that she has magic, because she gets struck by lightning, whereas actually she just fell over and there was a storm. So she's convinced herself she's been struck by lightning and now has magic powers. And meanwhile, there's a boy who has just learned that his mum has died, and he takes part in a kind of magician's act that she puts on stage. And when it's the sort of classic disappearing act, like she puts him in a box, opens the door, he's gone. She closes the door, goes to open it again, and he's still gone. And in her head, it's because, oh no, my magic's too strong. I've made him disappear forever. And how do we fix it? Whereas actually he's run away because he just had this terrible news. So it would have this like heart to it, and it would all sort of come back together at the end. And you'd always leave it like slightly open as well, like maybe it was really magic, but it was a really, really lovely show actually, and it was by a writer called Nick Lever, who was a fantastic mentor, and a producer called Lucy, who was excellent as well, and they were both really supportive. And that was a really great first experience actually, and the first draft went really smoothly. I needed a bit of help with the structure in the sort of like outlining stage, but once I knew what I was doing, like I had my scene breakdown, the first draft, I didn't really end up changing that much after that. Like it sort of stayed as it was pretty much. So that was a really great experience. And I kind of figured out at that point that, that genre suited me and I was well suited to it. Hollyoaks was a much different experience. Like, it took me a while to really understand the voice of that show.
Oh, right.
And I hadn't watched it before. Like, I had about a month when Nick had told me that, I was going for it. And so before the interview, so I ended up like binging a month's worth on like Channel 4 online. And then I kind of like, I was really lucky in one way because my script, they really liked enough that they sort of gave me, so my sample script, they liked enough that they gave me an episode and I didn't have to do a trial script. I kind of wish that I had, because it felt like I was really thrown in the deep end and I did not know what I was doing,
Right,
basically.
right.
And I didn't love the first few episodes I put out. It
What was
really
wrong
took
with them?
me. I just hadn't quite got the voice of the show. Some of it was really flat. I couldn't work out what they were looking for in a way. Like, I couldn't work out, yeah, it's a good question. It just didn't really, it just wasn't really fitting well. And I
Mm.
think they knew that as well.
Did they just give you a brief to write to then, or what?
So you would kind of get, at the time, it was a very detailed scene breakdown. Well, not actually, no, a story outline, I should say. So every month they would publish a story document, and it would have that week's. So there are 5 episodes a week. Each week, you would be assigned like one writer per episode, or maybe someone would have 2 episodes if they were doing a double.
Yeah.
And in that document, it would say episode 3 or whatever it was. These are the story beats, and it was quite precise in what they wanted. So each episode had to have 27 scenes, and it would have on the top page the locations you were allowed to use, the characters that were in this episode, and it would like do it like there used to be like 4 story strands. So you would have your A story, which is your main one, your B story, your C story, each one less and less. So your B story would be about 9 scenes, your C story like 5 scenes, and then a D story, which was like 1 or 2 scenes. And they were usually like a comedy beat, or they would kind of seed something that would pay off later. So they might, like just plant an idea that in the next episode becomes something that's an A
Right.
story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, and they were very well plotted. Like, I used to have like a story team whose job it was 5 days a week to sit down and work out what happens in each episode.
Oh my gosh! So you had a whole team.
Yeah, it was a factory. Like, it was like the actual like production company was based in what used to be an old school. It was actually where they filmed Grange Hill, because it was the same company.
Right.
So like, if you had a massive team there, you had a story team, you had your props teams, everywhere was a set. Like, you could be walking down a random corridor and then told to stop because they were shooting a scene there. They would use anything and everything. So they had script editing departments and research departments, because they would be working on often quite serious storylines as well, like stuff about domestic abuse and all of these kind of things. And they would have like proper research teams who would go out and speak to charities and campaigners and get proper insights, because it was such a beast and it was just constantly churning out episodes 5 days a week. As a writer, you don't have time to do that research. You need someone to do it for you, and then they would send you this document they've compiled with all of their notes and stuff, so that you've got that to refer to. So it was just a moving machine constantly. But eventually I did get into the swing of it, and some of my episodes were quite good and quite popular, and I was being offered an episode every month, which was great. But the thing is, like, you get given a week to do your first draft, except it's not, because at the same time you're doing a second draft of a different episode, or a third draft of a different episode. So in reality, you ended up with like 2 days to write a script, and it was a lot of work, and there was a lot of all-nighters, and especially because I was undiagnosed ADHD, like there was just sometimes I would struggle to get going, and things would get left till quite late, and then I was just constantly like rushing them last minute. And sometimes my brain tends to work well that way, so it's often that didn't really affect the quality, but it affected my own health and
Yeah,
well-being.
your mental health will be through the roof. Oh, dearie me.
Yeah, but that yeah, so while I was doing that, so I was on Hollyoaks for about 2 years, and then I was also like trying to get other jobs. So I ended up on a Disney show, and then I sort of got going with my children's TV career. And I was also pitching and like trying to sell original ideas as well.
Can I just ask you about the pitching side of things? Who are you pitching to? You pitching to the production company, a producer, a particular producer, or what? Who?
Usually a production company. So I would have, my agent would book in meetings. So it would be with, I don't know, pluck one out of random, like Kudos, for example.
Yeah.
And like you got a meeting with this guy from Kudos on this day, or this woman from Mammoth Pictures on this day, and you would just kind of have like ideas for TV shows in your head, and they would have usually read a sample script and decided they liked it, and wanted to meet with you, and then you would have a general chat, kind of like what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And they would just kind of ask you, like, do you have any ideas? And then you would pitch it. So I think sometimes if you're not in the industry or you're just starting out, you think pitching is like you have a big slideshow and, you do a big presentation. And I think some of that does go on in the States, but here it's very informal. So it's literally just having a conversation, and you'd be like, I've got this idea, it's about this, and this happens. You could even be like, I haven't quite got this fully yet, but it's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like this. No, no, no. And they'd either respond well to it or not. And if they do, then they ask you to kind of send it in. So you would write like a page or 2 pages, sort of outlining your idea. And
Yeah.
then if they like it, then they option it. So they pay you a small amount of money just so we can keep working on it together.
Ah, okay.
And then they would send it off to a channel, and go from there, basically.
Right. How does it work with the NDAs then? Because I mean, from a writer's point of view, it must be an awful situation to be in to go and pitch an idea and somebody say, no, no. 6 months later down the line, your idea is out there.
Yeah, it's fun. You kind of have to take in faith that idea stealing doesn't really happen. There's also just a general zeitgeist. Like you can pitch something and someone else has just had a very similar idea at the same time, because it does happen,
Mm,
because we're all watching the same news and getting the same inspiration and being, or
right.
you'll sit there and think, oh, no one's done a thing about a circus for a while. That's very original, and I'll pitch that. And then they'll be like, oh, we've had another circus idea come in because someone else has had exactly the same thought.
Yeah.
So it happens
It
that
does that.
things just sort of echo each other,
Sure,
quite
sure.
by accident. And it's not necessary that something's been stolen. So you don't worry too much about it. What can be frustrating is when you've pitched something and they'll say, like, oh, we've got something similar. And sometimes you suspect that's just their way of saying, oh, we didn't really like it. Because the thing that might be similar might be something that's just not a big deal. Like, oh, well, they both have cars in them. We've got something similar in development,
Yeah.
yeah. Or it might be
Yeah.
something that's really very similar.
Sure,
Or
sure.
sometimes it might just be like, oh, we can't really do that because we also did this other show which had a crime in it. And it's, sometimes like, and I get it as well, because what a producer's thinking is they have to pitch something higher up to a channel.
Yeah.
and it has to stand out, or it has to, appeal to them, and they're also risk assessing your ideas and going, yeah, but what will so and so from BBC think?
Yeah. The
So
feasibility of it all.
yeah, so it's as much about the market as it is the
Yeah.
ideas itself. Like, just because your script's good or people like it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get made. And I should
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
say as well, like, for any writers listening, like, your first script probably won't get made. A lot of like screenwriting books really like talk about how to sell your script, and really it's about creating a good sample that gives away your voice, shows someone what you can do, and then builds relationships, and then you meet producers and you go on from there, and you network, and then you get your first gig, and then you build up a portfolio and credits, and
Right.
that kind of thing. Like, that's how it works. It's not so much like you've come up with this brilliant idea. I bet so many writers, you've got this brilliant idea that they're obsessed with, and for them it's all about their idea. And fair enough, but that's not how the industry particularly works or thinks. It's not necessarily about a single idea, it's about you and what you can bring, and what's unique about you.
Mm.
So they're looking for people who can come up with 10, 20 ideas,
Yeah.
uh, and there might be something about you that's specific and like interesting. Like, with some of the top writers, like a Sally Wainwright or Russell T Davies, you kind of know what their voice is. You know what that show is going to be like. And that's what it's about. It's selling yourself rather
Right.
than your specific 6-part drama about blah blah blah. But that being said, like, I do have ideas that I've always had and I want to do, and you just keep going at them. But you just
Yeah.
have to be more than that as well. Yeah, where did we get to?
Well, there's a fair bit to it, isn't there? Really. Like you said, I mean, a writer's existence actually, in my mind, seems to be a poor existence, unless
Mm,
you're at the big time.
yeah, it's very. There's a phrase I always like. It's not the career you take to reassure your mother. It's a very uncertain industry. There's another one my friend Sophie says, which I love, which is TV isn't life and death, but it will kill you. Like it,
Yeah.
it's it's just a lot of uncertainty. It's freelancing basically. Anyone who's a plumber, self-employed, window cleaner, it's a similar thing. Like, you have to be constantly getting your own work constantly, and you're never quite sure what you're going to be doing two
Yeah.
months down the line, 3 months down the line. Unless you're on something like a Hollyoaks, which is why they're so useful, is because so long as you're not fired at any point, like you
Right.
that's consistent living.
Yeah.
But you're never entirely sure what's going to happen. In an ideal world, you build up some savings and you put those away for a rainy day, and so hopefully over a year you learn enough and you'll spread it out a bit. So you'd kind of have a kind of budget, and you can manage it fine like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, in my early career, I was lucky to be doing well enough that I was earning quite a lot, but it doesn't last forever.
No. Sure.
So it has, especially during COVID. So, you know, during lockdowns and stuff, I kind of had to like live off my savings. So, it was there for a rainy day, and then the rain happened. And
Oh,
then, so, things can go wrong. But it
yeah.
was, but yeah, the general idea is that you have to just kind of manage, or, if you're just starting out and you haven't been able to build up a kind of savings, then it's like having some other work or regular income as well. Like, I do think it's easier to write when you're not worried about money, even if you're
Right.
not earning a lot, so long as you know you've got enough to live on.
Sure.
It's like otherwise you're just sort of paralyzed with anxiety, or at least I found I've been. Like you're just kind of like you want to be writing a script, but at the same time you're like, but should I be on Indeed.com applying for blah blah blah?
Yeah.
It's just it's a lot easier to get on with things when you're don't have to worry about that stuff. You can
Yeah.
compartmentalize. But yeah, it's a very uncertain industry, and even more so nowadays, I think.
Well, I can imagine. How easy is it to? Can you like solicit scripts without an agent?
It's possible, but it's very hard. Some of the writers I knew on Hollyoaks did not have agents, but they were also very, very good at negotiations and contracts, and they had a kind of business mind.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'd come from other careers, like they kind of had that ability to do it all. But it's not easy. I'd say most writers you need an agent, and
But they're not that easy to get, are they?
no, it's also harder to get an agent. So there's a weird. There are some agencies that will accept unsolicited scripts, so you would just send in your script and go from there. Sometimes they ask for what they call a letter of commendation or recommendation, something like that. Where you would basically you'd have to do something already to get someone from the industry to just write a letter saying that you're a decent person, basically, or good to
Oh,
work
right.
with.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a reference, I suppose. So a friend of mine had submitted a script, and this is again one of those random things that you can't necessarily repeat. Like, so he was just online one day. A producer had put out, I haven't read any great animation scripts lately. Has anyone got any? Send me some. He sent them in, sent his ideas to him. This producer really liked them, invited them in to spend 2 days on a writer's room for a children's animation series. And that was it. It didn't go anywhere from there. But it was enough to make that contact and to get a letter from this producer that then he could send to an agent. And then from
Right.
that gets you through the door. So then they read
Yeah.
your script and then get an agent. So it's finding a way to meet someone from the industry who can vouch for you is the way to
Yeah.
get around that. And it's not easy, but it is doable. But it's just not obvious how you would do it, I suppose, especially if you
Right.
were coming from nowhere. Like it might be you could put on a play and invite people to see it. Often that's quite a good way of doing it. So you could invite an agent to see your play, and they might really like it and then ask to read your stuff and go from there. Or you could do a short film, or there are ways to kind of get an agent's attention that are different than just sending in your script blind in an email. But it does take a little bit of like thinking and navigation. And usually the best way of doing it is to just be writing stuff and making stuff if you can. Even if you enter into competitions, if you place well in a competition, you might hear back from one of the judges. And you might make a connection there and they could write a letter, anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is harder than it used to be. Unfortunately, I think it is quite tricky.
I know I want to talk to you about very quickly because we're coming to the end of the show. Is you worked on a neurodivergent project, didn't you? Let's just talk about that. How did you get it? And what was it like?
Yeah, so about 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD. So all of this time, all of my everything I've spoken about happened with me having no clue that I was neurodivergent, but also really struggling, being like, and I was like one of those that sort of looked like I was functioning on the outside, but just like an absolute mess behind the scenes, and like had several like nervous breakdowns and just exhausted myself constantly and getting really depressed. So eventually it kind of clocked that there was something up. I don't really know what triggered it, but I asked for an ADHD diagnosis, and then around about the same time I was starting to explore that, I'd been kind of talking to this production company who had this show in the works called A Kind of Spark. So it's based on a book by Elle McNichol, which is about a teenage girl with ADHD, no, autism. But one of the other characters that joins the show in series 2, she is autistic and has ADHD. And I should correct myself as well and say it's not with autism. She is an autistic teenager, which is I know a big thing in the community. It's like, you don't have something, you are that thing.
Yeah.
Slightly different with ADHD just because of the way it's phrased. But essentially, so yeah, we were kind of talking at the same time. I mentioned I was just going like through this diagnosis process. They were bringing in a character who was autistic and had ADHD in series 2, and they had a writing team that had a lot of representation of autistic writers, but didn't really have anyone with ADHD experience. I think there was one producer who did have it. So they wanted to bring in someone to kind of represent that side of things. And it was just a lovely, lovely time. And the head writer I knew from my Hollyoaks days, Anna McCleary. She was the head writer on the TV project, and Elle was also in the room as well, kind of steering it and making sure that she had, it was still going her way. Yeah, no, it was a really lovely team. I think we had a few days, I think it was 2 days in the writer's room, like kind of talking about what series 2 would be like and what the story was. And I was just kind of drawing on my own experiences, and everyone was kind of chipping in like their own kind of experiences as well. It makes it sound like it was all my idea. It wasn't. Like I was like, part of a team, and it was very much driven by Elle and Anna, who had this like really well thought out story that they were working towards.
And that was based on the book, was it?
Yeah, so the first series was kind of a like for the first book. Second series, a lot of it was original, but there was a character in the book who's mentioned who doesn't really get mentioned in the series. So the second series takes the character of Bonnie and like makes her the driving like force of the story for series 2. So essentially it's taking an element from the book and then fleshing that out into a story for the second series. So a lot of it was quite new stuff, but like it was just digging a bit deeper into some of the elements that were in the first book as well. So like the big thing was like the main character Addie and her family they're a really supportive family. Like she has parents who totally get it, and they're really like accommodating, and they really try and make it an inclusive household. Whereas Bonnie was from a background where her parents were a lot more, they were well-meaning, but they were kind of like, oh, remember, you mustn't tap your feet. So, they were trying to like get her to behave like a neurotypical person. Like they were really they were much more suppressing it. So she was a character who had a lot more trouble with it, and and therefore could behave in quite like problematic ways. And so she was kind of like a sympathetic antagonist for the series, and it was kind of like taking her, healing that family was kind of the story of like the second series. But that was just a really lovely experience. Like the episode was written quite quickly, and again didn't really have great deal of changes. Like it was it was, and also what was very nice, they kind of asked me to look over some of the scene breakdowns and sort of say, is there any elements here that you could put some more ADHD stuff in? So I would literally just be like, oh, in this scene, she could be tapping a foot or whatever. Like she might just be, or she, someone interrupts her here and she might just find that really frustrating. But I would always be like, but defer to Elle because I'm not autistic. So I can't say for sure how someone with both might respond.
Right.
So I would offer, this is the ADHD perspective. And then there would then sort of tie into the autistic perspective, and it would kind of find I don't want to say middle ground, but it would find like a natural way that Bonnie, the character, would react.
It's quite important though, isn't it, to get that right? Because I mean, especially with that subject matter, people pick up on that pretty damn quick.
Yeah, no, it got a massive response, and it's had such a lovely feedback from the audience who really feel represented by it. And there was one scene that we had to kind of really fight to keep in, and I know Elle's posted about this recently. There's a bit where there's like a speech about how neurodivergent people shouldn't have to apologize for being the way they are, and
shouldn't be apologising at all.
Yeah, exactly. There was, I'm trying to remember what the plot was. I think it was, so there'd been the fallout between some characters, and there was a best friend who was kind of trying to get them to make up to each other. Like one of them was essentially a neurotypical bully, and one of them was Addie, the main character, and the other character was like, why can't you both just say sorry to each other and get along? And Addie was like, well, because I've literally done nothing wrong. Like, I don't have to apologize for being the way I am. Like, she was the one who took against me, and she was in the wrong. So it was this like moment of just saying, I shouldn't have to apologize for being the way I am. And there were some notes on it, and like they were kind of fair enough, because it was kind of within the context of that one episode. Like that other character wasn't really in it. It wasn't really relevant to the story of that episode. It was, it was kind of came out of nowhere. And, so it felt a bit shoehorned in a strict plot narrative sense. Like you could lose that moment and the story would work. And
you still have flow.
Yeah. So I think they were coming at it, the networks were coming at it from like, what is this scene doing here? What is this relevant to anything? But we wanted it because we knew the audience would resonate with it. We knew that would really be powerful for them. And within the context of the entire series, it's a really important moment. So we've managed to keep it in, and we pushed for it. And we've now seen, people on Instagram and online, they share it, they respond to it. It has a big reaction. So, there's a very active fan base who are very responsive to that series, and that's been really, really lovely to see that it's had such an impact. So yeah, it was a really great time.
Cool.
I'm starting to lose my voice.
All right. Well, we've believe it or not, we've actually run out of time. I want to bring you back at some point. I've got to be honest, because there's still lots more that I want to ask you. Cool. And we can touch upon. Are you up for that?
Yeah, I'll be up for that, definitely. Yeah.
Real. All right. Well, look, for the meantime, Scott, thank you very much for coming on, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for having me, and it was a real pleasure.
Well, there you have it. Another subject. A writer's world. Could you seriously see yourself becoming a writer? Knowing that, some days there's no money. There's no food. Bread and jam for a week? I don't think so. And what about thinking outside the box to get an agent? It doesn't have to be a piece of writing, that you're putting in it. You may have written a play. Go down that route. It may be a short film.
Go down that route. Do anything to get an agent. If you're lucky enough, like Scott says, if you know someone in the business that knows about your work, get them to write a letter for you, yeah? And send that into the production company. Well, there you have it. Backstage Goss has brought you another subject, but who's next? That's what I want to know. Next up is all about the beauty side of the business, the hair and the makeup with Natalie Fox.